All right, so welcome back. In the last video, we set up our socket.io connection. As you could see, it's very easy. We added the socket.io package in Node.js and its types, and we simply registered it using the server of Strapi itself. Then we used the third-party asset, the socket.io Unity, to basically make the connection from front end to backend. We already made a search battle. Wait, why is this? Collection initialization can be simplified. How? What do you mean? Quick fix, what does that even mean? Can be simplified. Oh, okay, well, that's nice. We searched about, we hit this, we send our JWT, our character ID. Now, the JWT gets extracted, we get our JWT secret, and we verify it with the secret. Had the secret been wrong, or the JWT been wrong, it mismatching with each other, it would throw an error. I can actually show that right now. JWT secret, let's say it's blah, blah, blah. Let's see if that works. Because, I mean, what has to work is the verification has to say, hey dude, what the hell are you doing? So let's see what happens. So a user connected, and now I want to send a spoofed JWT, for example, or one with a wrong secret. We log in. Now we choose a character, search game. What happens here? It doesn't. Okay, I forgot to console log decoded. Let's do it again. Reconnecting attempt on connected. It reconnected. I restarted the server, but our front end socket.io still tries to reconnect. What happens here? Looks like it refuses to work or something. Am I right or am I wrong? Actually, why are we going this mile? We can just console log JWT secret. Is it doing anything at all? Console log search battle. Console log decoded. Decoded. Is this even the right? Yeah, that is right, sir. There's right. Why is it not? Because I'm stupid. Okay, stop. This button, back when I assigned the freaking script, it was in play mode. Search battle. Actually, okay. So let's do it like this. The secret stays the same, but we're gonna try to spoof, mess up the JWT token. So first of all, let's try this. Watch what we can do. It's gonna be very fun. Hacking 101. So Stark, yep, log in, click character search game. Perfect. It shows my JWT secret because I'm logging it. ID within. So this is the ID. Now, what if I send a spoofed JWT token? Remember, we can do this. Game manager. This is our JWT token. I'm going to copy that, and I am going to. Let's see. I have my DevTools Advanced here. I have a JWT encode decode. So let's place this here. Invalid signature. So let's see what's happening here. So I'm putting here a random secret key in. I cannot change from ID 2, and I want to make a request on behalf of ID number 13. It's creating, as you can see, a unique JWT. Let's use that JWT. Let's see what happens. So I want to play as and hack someone's account with ID, not Stark, but the legend 13. I don't know. Let's do this. Let's click this, search game. Boom, disconnect, transport, close. It even crashed the freaking server. Invalid signature. So that's interesting. So this is how you debug. In case someone tries to spoof it, it even crashes your server because the signature is wrong. Verify invalid signature. JSON Web Token error. So in this case, just do a try catch and then catch the error so that this doesn't happen again, because we don't want the server to freaking crash every time this happens. But anyway, we're not going to spend time doing that. You saw what happens if we try to spoof the JWT token without knowing the secret. Now search battle, JWT secret, decoded, we have the decoded ID. Now, what we have to do is, as I mentioned earlier, this is successful. The search battle is successful. We've extracted the ID. We're now going to have to add this guy to the queue. So what's going to happen is add to queue, and it's going to be an object. And we're going to have to create the player object. So we're going to make an object. So player object for queue. So we need an object to put it inside of the queue. Now, let's see what he does. We need the user. Yeah, this is amazing. Now, user ID, char ID, character. I like to use different. Socket ID, no, not socket ID. I want to transport the entire socket. So why are we doing this? So I'm creating an object, and I'm going to create a function where we input this object. So we're passing along his ID, the character ID he chose, and his own socket. So that when we add a second player to the queue, we start the battle, we're going to have to take this guy's socket and emit the start battle event. So we're going to have to pass around sockets. We have to store these sockets alongside the user so we know who we're emitting to. Now, we're using TypeScript to use types. I just made an object of type any, as you can see. So any, and socket does have a type because it comes from the socket.io library. Now we're first going to have to create the add to queue function, but I have to also, I want to be able to do this. So player object for queue dot, I want to access the character. Well, okay, it understands it right now. It's inferring it because it's smart enough. But I have to give this a type, because add to queue, what's going to happen is, let's make a new folder for our custom scripts. So folder scripts, and inside of scripts, we're going to make the battle manager, because we're not going to manage battles. Yes. Let's do this real quick. Oh, why is it dead? Let's put this here. Oh, let's put this here, I said. Let's make the add to queue function. So very simple. Add to, now usually in TypeScript you're going to do this function add to queue, boom, and we're going to accept an object of type what? Well, any. If we use any, we might as well use JavaScript. Now it's not crying anymore, but because this is correct behavior. But we want to be strict. We want to know what we're getting, so we know how to validate and what to expect. We're going to have to make the type. We're going to make the type called, I want this to be of type queue player, but this type doesn't exist yet. Cannot find name queue player. So we're going to make it here. Type queue player equals, so the user ID will be of type number, its character ID will be of type number, and its socket will be of type socket. Now, you hit tab, socket.io socket has no, wait, something is wrong here. Socket. Why is it not giving me socket? Socket. Oh, there we go. I just needed a little bit of help. We have to export this type. so we can use it here. Export. Now it stops crying. Cannot find name. Well, quick fix, it still have to import it. He just imports it and we're done. Now it still cannot find add queue because we also have to export function add to queue. But let's do this, add import. Now it's also importing add to queue. But I really don't personally like this notation. So you can do functions like this, just like JavaScript. I don't really like this notation. I like the arrow function notation, which is the same thing, but like this. So const add to queue equals a function that returns something. So this is exactly the same thing as this, except we're also going to have to export it. Except we're going to have to say it also. So what you have to understand is this is the function. This is a function which returns something. In this case, nothing. It's void. So this notation is actually this. Function is this. We give it a name, add to queue. So const is a constant variable equals a function. So add to queue equals a function, which returns something. Now, it's going to need a parameter. So player is of type queuePlayer. Boom. Now it's not crying anymore because this is of type queuePlayer. It knows this, and add to queue expects a player of type queuePlayer, and we're done. Now we can remove this, and this is from now on how we're going to write arrow functions. How we're going to write functions, because I personally prefer this. It's more robust. It's less verbose. Now add to queue. Let's see. How are we going to do this? We add to queue. We're going to have to create the queue variable, global queue variable. This is going to be very simple, actually. Let queue equals an array of queue players. There we go. We initialize it with an empty array. So we add to queue. We simply do queue push player. We're done. This is our simple queue. Actually, we're not done. Now, if this gets called a second time, the queue push player, there will be two players. But we're going to have to make a behavior of like, hey, if the queue length is bigger than 0, that means there is already a player in there and I want to match with them. Otherwise, we just add myself, the first person. Let's pretty this, Control K, Control F. So now this part will be, hey, the second player is getting added. Handle that. Let's save these scripts and do a yarn develop to make Strapi run. So basically, at this point, we've already found someone. Found our opponent. So let's create the battle. All right. Let's see. How are we going to tackle this? Well, we have to... at this point, we have a reference to the second player, but we also need a reference to the first player who was in there, our opponent. So we're going to say const opponent equals, yeah, exactly, Q shift, and we're done. So Copilot was trying to cast it here. We don't need that. It will already understand it, right? Yeah, opponent is of type queuePlayer. What does shift do? It takes the array, removes the first element from an array and returns it. If the array is empty, undefined is returned, and the array is now modified. That's interesting, because shift always returns the first array. Now, in this logic, that will always be the case. There will always be either one person and the second person gets hit. We take the first person and we start a battle. Remember, this is a basic matchmaking system. You're going to make a very complex advanced game. You're going to need some very robust handling of your queues. Now we have a reference. We have both references. And we can start basically creating the battle. Yeah, we can start creating the battle. So what's going to happen is const battle equals new battle with player 1 and player 2. Now, we don't have the battle. We don't have the players. How are we going to do this? Now, the way we have to visualize this is what information do we have and what information do we need? We have two players with their ID, the character ID, and the socket. The way this will work is we create a battle object, and inside of the constructor of the battle object, just like in C#, or we call battle start battle, it will emit both sockets of both players to start the battle. But when we start the battle, remember, what do we need? Let's go back to select. Actually, sorry. From select, we go to battle. We need the character data of the character that we have chosen, its health and mana, but we also need their skills. So what's going to happen is we first are going to, according to the character ID, fetch the character data from Strapi. Inside of this new battle, when we emit both player objects, these both player objects will also need the skill data and the character data. So that's what we're going to do now. And this is going to be fun. It's not complex. I would say it's fun. So not only do we need QPlayer, we also need a type that will represent. This time we don't need to export it. We're going to use it here. And indeed, the battle player. But in this case, we're going to need, I don't want to keep using Copilot. Just ID is of type number. Username, this time, is of type string, because nowhere do we have the username here. But we need to display the username in the battle. We're going to need to store the username to send it back to Unity. Again, we're going to have to keep the socket in check. We're going to have to store the socket. We also need the character. Now, this is an interesting part. What is the type of the character? I always used to, so what I would used to do was type character equals, and then let's give it let's do this, character. And then I always used to go to the content character, and I always used to content builder character, name, description, string, image, string, health, mana, number. I seriously used to fill these in. But since Strapi version 4, well, Strapi is literally just starting to do this, but they finally are generating types based on their content, the entity, based on the schema. So what they're doing actually is, what they're trying to do, what they're starting to do, they go to character, they go to content types, they go to schema, and according to this schema, they can make the types. So all you have to do is literally import that type and not make your own type, just import it. So it's more like character Strapi, but we don't have that yet. Strapi does not support it yet fully. So we're going to have to use a third-party asset for that, and it's an amazing asset. It works perfectly. Now that asset is called Strapi plugin schema to TS. By the way, let me star this because it really deserves a star. So what this does, it literally automatically generates the TypeScript interfaces. Types are interchangeable. He calls it interface. I call it types. From Strapi schemas. Scans for new or updated Strapi schema. So every time I hit save, like remember, Yarn develop runs as a watch. So every time I save, it restarts the server, meaning it will also regenerate the types if I make any change. Oh, beautiful. Yarn at Strapi. So let's Control C, go here, and add it. So let's open this. Are we in the backend? We're in the backend. Control C, and boom. It's going to take some time. Let's go back until it's finished. Now we need to config it. We have to enable it. But development, except no. Okay. So what it's saying is the plugin needs to be configured in the configs plugins file, Strapi. The file needs to be created if it does not exist. It does not exist because we've never created it. I already know. Let's copy this. Config plugins.ts. It does not exist yet. So what was that? Config. There's no plugins, so we make it plugins.ts. Paste that schema.ts enables true. Save it. Now, what? Did you see that? Did it already start creating it? Configure converting schema. Did it already do it? Schema to TS. So I think it's already done it. Now, how do you know? You go, there it is. It generate, remember? API character. I was looking at the schema just now, right? But it also has created the types. Oh, beautiful. Oh, I love this. So it has created 4 different types without any relations, admin panel lifecycle, character plain, or character normal attributes. So attributes is what you get if you do the raw HTTP posts. And the core controller makes it so that it returns with attributes. But we are going to directly query the database and use the character plain. And what's funny is, as you can see, ID is of type number, this is that, but then you see description, image, health, mana all have question marks. What that means is not only can it be number, but it can also be undefined. So the question mark, just like in C#, I think, means optional. So watch what happens. If I go to content type builder and the character name, if I change it to be required, finish and save, watch what happens. The name, watch this. It's gonna lose its what's it called? Question mark. Come on. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, it's because I saved this and it's crashing. Type expected. Let's I was too early. So save, yarn develop, back to character. This question mark is going to disappear because it's now recreating the Typescript types. Regenerating them. Come on. You can do it. Why is it taking so long? Why is it rebuilding the admin? Why is it rebuilding it? Okay, whatever. Maybe because we uploaded a new plugin? Yeah, let's wait a couple seconds. Oh, it's taking pretty long. So watch this disappear. Why did it not disappear? Do I have to reopen this? Hold up. Why did that not work? Did I hit? Oh, I think I didn't hit save. Because it already crashed. There we go. I didn't hit save. So yeah, see, it's an amazing plugin. It regenerates the types on the fly. Now, our characters still don't have skills yet. As you can see, character no relations, that means the plane will have relations. So what's going to happen is, when we make the skill, besides character, there will be a skill folder with its content type controller route services, and it will also generate the types for that skill, and it will relate with each other. These skills are going to be pretty complex. We're going to start out, the skill's not itself, but we're going to start out small. They will have a name, a description, a cooldown, and a mana cost. But the beauty of game development is making a character builder in your admin panel. So you're creating a character and assigning the skills to him, but you want to code the skills by dragging and dropping by visual scripting. And Strapi allows that. It has a very neat feature. I remember when I was coding online games, I used to create these take damage functions or stun functions every time. I was repeating it every time, but you can actually code it one time and attach it to your logic of Strapi, and it will be reused. But now we're going too deep. I will show you what I mean. Now we have generated the type. So where was I? Let's close this. Reopen that. So character will be of type character plain, and here it is, auto-completing. Boom. So first, we're going to fetch the character according to the character ID. Then we're going to create the battle player and pass it in the new battle. So what we're going to do, I'm thinking of the const battle. I would actually really like for this error to go away. So let me create the battle first, the battle object. Now with the battle object, we can do just like, what's it called, C#. We also have classes in Typescript. Class battle. Player 1 equals battle player of type battle player. Player 2 equals type battle player. A class battle has a constructor. Does GitHub Copilot going to do that? No. So let's create a constructor. And there we go. But it's not Q player, it's battle player. Let's close this. Q player is battle player. This dot, there we go. So the constructor assigns this player the player I pass. This player, the player I pass. That is this. So we're going to have to create the player 1 and player 2 of type battle player. So is Copilot going to help us here? I don't care about that, but let's, come on. Okay, so, oh, it does. Okay, so, yeah, so battle player is constructed. ID with player user ID, and the player is the one that we add to queue. But something is, yeah, actually, yeah. So player user ID, username test, well, the username, we don't have that yet because we don't send that. We have to first fetch the username based on the user ID. We already have the socket, but the character, look what it's doing. It's initializing it with basically default placeholder data, but we also don't have to do that. So remove that and remove this. It's incomplete, I know. Now we do the exact same thing, but for the opponent. Player 2 equals the opponent, so that's this. And we pass it a new battle and see it's happy because both are battle player. It's just these are not happy because they're unfinished. Now we're going to have to fetch the username by using the user ID. What's interesting is the Strapi TypeScript generator not only generated the type for characters, it also generated a type for my user. And it's, again, as I said, users are coded as a plugin. And it's not called users. It's called users permission for some reason. And for some reason, it's in extensions. So this is something you just have to memorize. So let's look at, oh wait, where's the type for a character? Did he place it somewhere else? I think he did it in, yeah, okay. He did it in common. He gave every common thing in Strapi its own type. So the media attributes name, okay, that's interesting. So the user, this is the user. Interface user or user plain. We're going to have to query the database of Strapi, and you're going to have to read the documentation on this one, but I will show you how it works. So const, we want player 1 from Strapi, await strapi.db. I think actually it's trying to do query. await query, user permission, find one. This is Strapi version 3, actually, what he's showing here. This is wrong. This is how Strapi version 4 does it. DB, query. Then we have to specify the entity name that we want to query, which is plugin users permissions user. That's correct. Close this. Find one. Open. And then how I hate this tooltip. Let's go back. Okay. Open. And how v4 does it is version 4. It needs a where clause where the ID equals my player user ID. And we're done. Now we use an await, and it's going to cry because add to queue is not a sync. So we have to turn this into a sync. Remember, this is an arrow function. We're not going to put a sync here. This is not the function. This is just the name of the function. This is the function. This is where we put a sync. What is the type? Any. The type is any. So we're going to have to either cast it or just give it the type here. So is of type, remember, plain, user plain. There we go. Boom. And that's it. Now we're going to have to do the same thing, but with opponent. I think if I do this, does it understand I'm going to have to do it for opponent? There we go. Opponent user ID. Now we have the username. So the username is exactly, but I want to show you if we do this dot, because of Strapi's type, we have access to username. If this were JavaScript, we would not have access to the username. I mean, we would have, but you would have to guess what the exact naming is of username. Is username with lowercase. Now the same thing we can do here, username, player2 from Strapi, username. Now all that's left is the character that the player is going to use. Now we're going to do the exact same logic here. We're just going to get the character using the character ID. This time we're going to use Strapi entity service instead of Strapi DB. So let's just do that. So const player1 character await Strapi entity service find one, and again. Now, this time it's not a plugin, it's API. Now you might get pissed right now thinking, how the hell am I supposed to know it's API character? Documentation. Not only documentation, if you go back to the generated files, I think it wasn't source, it was an API character. Just go to controllers. There it is, API character. Go to routes, API character. Services, API character. This is its unique identifier, basically, for Strapi. So we're going to find one character. And this is a bit different because it's the entity service we need to use for the entities that we've created. Player1 character. First, the find one accepts always. So the find one here, we did a find one with a where clause. We could also do where username is opponent username. But find one sadly always only works with an ID. So you always have to input the ID. You cannot find by username. At least that's as far as I know. Maybe they've changed that. But what's going to happen now is we have the player1. And then, no, sorry. It's the player. And only here we have access to the character ID. See, I wanted to use player1, but we don't have the character ID here. We have player, and we have a character ID in the player, which comes from here. Look at the types. Character ID from the player, but not the battle player. We are creating, because we are creating the battle player now. And then we tell it which fields we want it to populate. by default, Strapi does not return all the fields. You have to specifically state which fields you want to populate. So the way that works is populate. Oh, I love this because the entity service has its own type entity service. It understands that I now have access to the populate property. So populate, now by default, it populates this. Let me show you. It populates, let's go back to the type. Actually, it's here. It populates these primitive types, strings, numbers, and everything, but it does not automatically populate relations. Now, I know the relations that we need is skills. So we're gonna have to add this. It's not there yet, but it will be there. Now, let me check. Let me make this KF, player one character, character player one character. Boom. There's an error. Type any entity is missing the following properties. Huh? Ah, it's of type any entity. So this is what Strapi is working on right now to also what Strapi is working on right now is you saw the third-party script package that we installed, plugin schema2ts, which automatically generates types. They want to make this built-in, basically, but they haven't done that yet. That is why we're using this. So we're going to have to cast this. We're going to cast this into, cast that into character plane. What is this? Is missing from created at. Any entity is missing. Not only does it need, it also, okay, so it's still crying because we also have to cast it. But if you cast it, we don't need this anymore. So as character plane, there we go. Now it's not gonna, we have to cast it here. Good. We're done here. I think if I do this, const, layer 2 character, ID is populate skills as character plane, deployment keyword D. All right. Now, let's test this. Let's console log both players, console log player 1 and player 2. And in order to test this, it will only work if we have 2 players. So we're gonna have to make a Unity build, but that will happen fast. This it's a small game. Now I want to see if it truly, by character ID, fetches the actual character it needs, and if the character plane correctly is parsing it. So let's go. Now let's save this scene. The battle has to be off. Has to be off. All right. Let's turn auth on. We already have 2 players, right? We have the Legend 27 and Stark. We have a character. All right, that's great. Magic Wizard. All right. So let's hit Control S and let's make a build. Oh, build settings. Let's build and run. Yeah, just make a new folder, builds. There we go. What? What just happened? Excuse me? How do you mean player because scripts had compiler errors? How do you have compiler errors? You did not have Game Manager 10. What is this? Unity editor, Unity 2. What the Okay, remove that. Oh, I hadn't saved that. Just save that. Oh, that was weird. A very wrong import by pressing random tabs, I guess. Oh, let's do it again. Bold and run. Let's go. Is the Strapi server running? Yep, it is running. Am I correctly calling add to queue whenever necessary? Yep. I hate this. It's full screen, but whatever. The Legend 27. We log in and we choose, let's choose the big cool mechanic, hit search game. All right, now let's go to Unity. Let's see Unity. By the way, we haven't put any validation in here. I can literally hit search game again and it will find myself. In a robust online game, you're going to have to put all those types of validations. You're going to have to gray out the button so people can't press it anymore. You would have to gray it out in the backend too. So if you already exist in the queue, you cannot call it twice. So start. But we don't care about that. It's a simple game. We're going to do validation in different ways. Hit 2, search game. What happens here? Beautiful. As you can see, now the big print is because I'm also logging, I'm console logging the entire thing, so it's also logging the socket. But we have the ID, we have the username, if correctly fetched the username, we have the socket, and we have the chosen character, Magic Wizard, with the image, health, mana, creator, description, everything. Beautiful. Now also the Legend 27 with of ID 1 because he was the first one we registered. And we have the character here. Perfect. Now, all that's left is making the skills and relating them to the character. That's the fun part. That's actually my favorite part of this course. My favorite part of this course is we're going to create the skills, attach it to the character with the relationship in the Postgres relational tables. Then we're going to have to create the mechanics, the cast mechanics. Now, you have to think, when we create the skills in Strapi, it will generate the types of those skills. So the skill will have a description of what it does, a cooldown and a mana cost, and a name. But we also would like to code the mechanic, the act of damaging one opponent. We cannot easily do that in Strapi, but there are ways. And we would have to do that in Strapi because we also want the Typescript generator to generate that skill mechanic too, so we can easily access it. Now, it's very abstract what I'm saying, but you're gonna have to see it with your own eyes to understand. So I'm gonna end the video here, and in the next video we're going to create the skills in Strapi and relate them with a character, and then code them in the backend. Now, first, we're going to make sure that the skills are also being sent in the battle. So when the battle actually starts, so what we're going to do is start battle function. And we're going to hit start battle, which will emit on both sockets of the players, because player 1 has socket, and we can emit battle start. And that will emit their entire object, this console log that you see here. So then we will that means we will have access to the character in the battle screen, and we can show the character, but we also need the skills variable, an area of skills to show in the battle. That is where we're going to continue from tomorrow, and I'll see you in the next video.